month 1 of Let's Stitch a Year of Stars. Today we're going to be stitching the combination star. The thread that I'm going to be using here on this quilt, on the top I'm using So Fine. The color that I'm going to be using on my whole entire panel is color number 402. On my bobbin, on the bottom, I'm going to be using bottom line thread. The color that I'm using here is 624. Now I do have a great neutral color on my backing, so that's why I've chose to go with a neutral like the top. Alrighty friends, let's get stitching. I'll start out by stitching in the ditch all the way around the outside of my quilt block. I am using my mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler. The rulers and all of the notions that you can see here, batting, other things, are available for purchase on our website, pieceandquilt.com. Once I have stitched in the ditch all the way around the outside of the block, now I'm ready to start dressing it up. Personally, I love the look of stitch in the ditch, so it's something that you're going to see quite often from me. Starting in this first blue block, I will start out by stitching in the ditch around the inside light pink block. Once I've stitched in the ditch all the way around that block, now I'll adjust and use the medium size curve on the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler and stitch a point-to-point curve all the way around the inside. Once I've stitched that point-to-point curve, now I'll travel to the outside of the block, moving out a 1/2 inch to the point where the first marked line on my machine quilting ruler lines up with the side of that light pink block, so I'm stitching a straight line that's a 1/2 inch on the outside. I'll repeat that process on all 4 sides of that unit. Now on this block there are 4 of those units in each of the 4 corners, so I will stitch each of those blocks the same. However, you know me and you know that I like to work 1 block at a time. So from that blue unit, I'm going to travel over into the first yellow section. Now I haven't done any marking here, so I'll stitch point to point from that yellow section, from the blue section through the yellow section right to the center, adjust and stitch to the outside. When I get to the outside, then I'll travel in, stitching a 1/4 inch inside echo. After I've stitched that echo, now I'm going to fill the inside of that new triangle with some pebbles. After I've stitched those pebbles, now I'll move on and I'm going to work on the next light pink triangle. Each of these light pink triangles all the way around the block will be stitched out with the same design. I'm stitching an X that crosses through the center of that block. So to stitch out that X, I line up my machine quilting ruler so the 3rd marked line intersects the top of the block, stitch all the way across, travel around the top of the block and repeat that on the opposite side. From there, I'll travel to the yellow triangle where I'll stitch a point-to-point arrow. Again, holding my machine quilting ruler so the 3/4 inch marked line intersects the top of the block, stitch to that center point, and then to the opposite corner. You can definitely go through and mark out all of these increments. You could even mark out this whole entire design. Now, once I've stitched out that unit, I'll travel up to the next portion of the yellow block. This yellow block, I'm actually at that point going to travel and work right on that center block. I kind of work my way all around, but in the end, I will complete the whole entire design. So once I've stitched in the ditch around that pink unit, the center light pink unit, then I'll switch to the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler's medium size curve where I'll stitch point-to-point curves around the inside. So now what I've stitched in those outside blue corner blocks, I'm bringing in to the center of the block. So once I've stitched that, I'll travel along my stitch lines, moving back to the outside where I'm going to fill in that next yellow triangle with first the inside echo. After I stitch the inside echo, then I'm going to quilt pebbles. Now I do teach you step by step how to quilt my pebbles in my book and online class, Beginner's Guide to Free Motion Quilting. However, when I'm stitching those out, I'm trying to vary my size and alternate directions as I stitch those out. Now I'm going to move on to the next blue corner unit, where I'll start out by stitching those point-to-point straight line in the ditch and then the point-to-point curves around the inside of that unit. After the point-to-point curves, then I'll move to the blue sections where I'm going to stitch those equally spaced half-inch straight lines. Now all the thread that I'm using here on this quilt top is so fine, the color number 402. I am not changing thread colors, which makes it a little bit easier for me to use or to move from one point to the next. If you do want to switch thread colors, you can definitely go through and do that. I love this so fine. I think it blends really nicely. My personal opinion is that a quilt like this, I could probably get away with one thread color. However, if you do want to change thread colors, these are your quilts. Do whatever you want with them. Once I've completed the blue unit, now we're going to move on, and in the next light pink unit, I'll stitch that crossover design. Many of the designs that I am stitching out and will be stitching out this year on this year of stars are designs that I did teach you step by step how to quilt in my stitch along Let's Stitch a Block a Day 365 quilt block designs. So if you haven't ever seen that stitch along or checked it out, make sure you do also check that one out, because there's a lot of great information and inspiration. We also have a book that coordinates with that stitch along. Moving into that yellow portion of the block, I will continue stitching, creating those new triangles and filling in each of those triangles with first the echo and then the pebbles. You'll notice how I kind of work my way around the block. You could go through this block design, really any of them, start out with all of the corner units, and then you could move on and do all of the yellow section and then all of the light pink. You can totally work any way you want. I love instant gratification, so the reason that I kind of work finishing one small unit at a time is the gratification that it brings me. I can see right then when I'm done with that portion of the quilt what that portion will look like when it's all done, because it is all done. So it's totally personal preference. This is just the way that I like to work. From that point, I'll continue on, moving down to the next section, the yellow triangle. I'll stitch that point-to-point arrow, and then those light pink triangles will all have that X design. Once I've completed stitching this quilt block design, then if I have done any marking, I can go through and mist away those marked lines. Now, if you do like this block design, or if you just want another block design, more inspiration, make sure you do hop over to my Patreon page, patreon.com/NataliaBonner, for another version of this quilt block. And throughout the whole year, every time we share a quilt block design here, we're also going to be sharing a bonus block design over on Patreon. So make sure you check out our Patreon page for inspiration all year long. Have a great day, everybody.